Alrighty, good morning everyone, and it's about 11 o'clock now, so we'll probably jump into today's webinar. Mia, if I can get you just to add anyone else that's remaining as they come through, please. But yeah, kia ora and good morning everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is ArcGIS Online, Managing Content and Credits in ArcGIS Online. And we just wanted to thank you all for joining us today for today's webinar. And as a really quick introduction, if I can get my slides to change, I'm Jessica Burrell, and I'm a technical support and licensing analyst here at Eagle Technology. I've been with Eagle for about 5 years now, and I'm based in our Auckland office. Mia, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Hi everyone, I'm Mia Horton and I'm a GIS graduate this year, and I started at Eagle Technology in the Wellington office this year.
Awesome, thank you, Mia. So what we'll do now, just quickly cover off today's agenda. So essentially the agenda is in the title itself. So we're going to be talking all about how to manage content and credits in ArcGIS Online. But within that, we want to jump into what are the roles of an administrator, go over ArcGIS Online credits, what they are, how do we consume them, and different ways to effectively manage your content in ArcGIS Online. To follow on from that, we're going to discuss a couple of resources available, some upcoming training, as well as a live Q&A to finish. So on the topic of Q&A, you will find that there is a question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So please feel free to ask any questions at any time throughout the webinar, and we will try to do our best to answer these at the end of the webinar when our Q&A section comes up. Cool, so we'll roll straight into what are the roles of administrator. So what can the admin do? Essentially, and to be pretty blunt, they can do everything. So the administrator is responsible for the entire administration of the organization, of your ArcGIS Online organization. The key responsibilities are to manage the content held in the subscription, and they manage the credit budgeting and allocation of credits to your users. Administrators are also responsible for managing all of the licensing, both assigning and unassigning to users in the subscription. As well as this, they also control the access that their users within the organization, such as to the subscription, as well as link sites such as My Esri or Esri Academy. Now that we know what administrator can do, let's dive a little bit more into the specifics and let's start talking about ArcGIS Online credits. So you might be wondering what actually are ArcGIS Online credits. So ArcGIS Online credits are a form of currency for specific cloud-based services. They're enabling our members within the organization to execute various workflows such as performing analytics, storing content in the cloud, and using premium content. Now, every ArcGIS Online subscription comes with a pool of credits that can be shared by members of the organization. With ArcGIS Online credits, you are working with a bit of a pay-as-you-go setup. So with the credits, you can pay for the tools you need when you need them, rather than paying for all sorts of tools at once and only using a small portion. So now that we know what credits are, how many do you actually get for your organization? With the purchase of certain user types, this comes with a specific set of credits for each user. So with our creator and our professionals, and for the professional that includes the standard and the plus license, each user comes with 500 credits each. We then have our mobile worker and our contributor, who each come with 250 credits each. So if you were to purchase one creator and one mobile worker, you're looking at a total pool of 750 credits. You can also additionally purchase blocks of 1,000 credits. So if you find that that total number, say you had 1,000 credits from 2 creators, isn't enough for your organization, you can purchase these credits additionally. A slight caveat I want to put in here is if you are utilizing licensing types like nonprofit, your total number of credits will look slightly different. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about 100 credits per user. Next up, let's go over what actually consumes these credits that you're getting for your organization. So there are several ways we can consume credits. And these being the key ones are storage, performing analytics, and the use of premium content. So with storage, we get 3 different types of storage that consumes credits. The first one is feature storage, which is specific to feature layers hosted in ArcGIS Online. And this is calculated at 2.4 credits per 10 megabytes stored monthly, and it's calculated hourly. I know it's a bit complicated, but these calculations are available online also for assistance. We then have our file storage. So this includes other types of layers and files, including attachments in your hosted feature layers. And our third type is imagery storage. Now this is specific to imagery layers hosted in ArcGIS Online, and this is calculated at 1.2 credits per 1 gigabyte stored per month, calculated hourly. A couple more examples of analytics that consume credits would be geocoding. So geocoding consumes 40 credits per 1,000 geocodes. And these transactional-based tools, which also include things like image analysis and spatial analysis, is charged out by the number of attributes that are added into your data set. Another example is our drive time generation. You would be charged for each travel area generated. So if you had 2 travel areas and you wanted 5 and 10 kilometer drive times calculated, you would be paying for 4 different drive times. Cool. Now that we hopefully have a little bit of an understanding about what consumes credits, what are they, how many do we get, let's dive in now to how do we manage these credits in ArcGIS Online. To do that, I want to take you into a little bit of a live demonstration. And what we'll be going over is creating credit reports and dashboards in ArcGIS Online. Now, before I go into this, I do want to have you mindful that this is only for administrators, this process. And a lot of what I'm about to show, you need to have an administrator role to run a lot of these. I will make it known when I'm showing some processes that an administrator does not need to be, you don't need to be an administrator to run it. So hopefully now when I share my screen, it should come over. Mia, can you see that one? Thank you, Mia. So first thing we need to do is log into ArcGIS Online. Sign on in there. And once we get to our landing page, we need to navigate to our organization tab. Now, to create credit reports, there is 2 different ways we can go about accessing the tab. So the first one is along this blue tab, you've got the status option. If we click this, it's going to take us to the exact same space as this view status button does in the credits box. It's totally up to you how you do it. Some people might have a preference. I, for whatever reason, prefer to go through this credits option, so we'll click the view status button here. Cool. So just to give you a bit of an explanation about what we're looking at here, this is the ArcGIS Online dashboard page. Now you'll note that there not only is something here about credits, but there's also sections on content, apps, members, and groups. But for the sake of this demonstration, I just want to hold your attention to the credits tab. So first thing we want to do is come up with a date. So we can either quick select a date at any of these intervals. I'll go with a 60 or a 90-day period. If you have a custom time frame that you're interested in looking at, you're more than welcome to pop those in here. And what this will do is it will drum up a bar graph and a pie chart all related to your credit consumption over time. What this is really helpful for is seeing if you've had random spikes in your credit usage and you want to know why. So we can very quickly see by this top bar graph that there's been some spikes in when credits have been consumed on certain dates. And what we can do with this information is start to understand why this happened and maybe even who caused the spike increase. So to break this down a little bit further, the green section here is all about the storage that is consuming credits in ArcGIS Online. And for all organizations, or at least most organizations, this should be the highest or will be the highest consumer of credits. The blue is all about analytical processes that have been are occurring that is consuming credits. And what we can do with this pie chart down below is break down a little further into what's actually happening and what specific processes are consuming these credits. So first up for storage, we can see that this is, again, the key consumer. We can click this one and it will break it down a little bit further. We can see feature storage is the largest consumer, with file storage still taking up a couple of credits, but nowhere near as many. We can click in one level further and we can take in some more information from here. So you'll see the standard feature data store is the bigger consumer and file attachments are a little bit smaller. So file attachments and file storage is slightly different. As you can see here, there's a different consumption rate. Now, if you are happy looking at this in a dashboard, you have it right in front of you here. But we also have the option to download this as a Excel spreadsheet. So you just click this little cloud button here. And I will drag onto the screen what this one looks like. So here we have what the output of this Excel spreadsheet would be. So you can see here there's nothing about the specifics of the user. However, it does outline what processes are consuming the credits and on what dates. And if we scroll along this line here, you might see where likely some of those spikes are occurring in our bar graph. So we can see that on this date, we've had credits of 1.6 credits consumed, and that looks like it's in spatial analysis. We can scroll further down and the same thing will likely occur. We can see again 0.69 credits were consumed here. And all this is really giving us is a bit of an overview about where our credits are consumed most. We can see if on average our credit consumption is sticking around the same level, or just making sure that we're managing everything efficiently. So the next thing I want to bring your attention to is creating reports in ArcGIS Online. So we can click this reports tab, and essentially what this is we can run reports about all sorts of different areas of our ArcGIS Online subscription to understand what's going on. So to create a report, we click this create report button here. You'll note that you can do a single report or a report schedule. In this instance, we're going to do a single report, but to quickly go over a report schedule, you might have ran a report once and thought this is fantastic. I want this happening more often. I want to keep an eye on, say, my credit consumption or some of the other items that are there. You can set up a report that might run fortnightly, quarterly, whatever date you find useful, and you can have that running in the background. But let's go into the single report option here. Again, you'll see there's several different report types we can create, but we just want to do a credit report today. Give it a good name, probably not what's here if that's not relevant to you, but you're welcome to edit this to whatever suits your organization. We again have some pre-configured date selections that you can put in, so weekly, monthly, or quarterly. Do note that sometimes these can be a little bit finicky and you will need to do some editing to make sure that it's the same date selection that you're after. When you're happy with the time frame, we go click and create report. Since this will take a little while to load, I'm going to take you into one that I've already downloaded. Hopefully this loads awesome. So we see this credit report is a lot more in depth than the last one that we looked at. And to break it down a little bit for you is it's essentially telling us all of the users in our organization and what areas or analytics they've used that have consumed credits. So we can see quite a few credits are being consumed with ArcGIS notebooks. And this is where we could probably see that, hey, there's a few credits being consumed here. Is this necessary? For myself, I would not be concerned with these level of credits. They're quite low and they're not going to impact my organization negatively. But you might see you have users who are consuming hundreds or tens of credits, higher than what you'd expect. So this does give you a chance just to kind of break down what your users are doing and are they consuming more credits than you'd hope they would. You can use this one in combination with the other report that we downloaded to kind of understand a general holistic view of where your credits are going, who's consuming them, and on what dates they're being consumed. So we've covered off the two reporting types there. There's a few more things I just want to go over. The next one being some settings that you can look at to make sure credits are not being consumed where it's not necessary. The first settings tab I want to take you to is this credits tab. So you'll see there's a couple of options here. Now this first one, to enable credit budgeting tools, we want this selected to ensure that when we go and try and create those reports, it's available for us to do so. If that's not enabled, you won't get those dashboard overviews. The second option here is show each member's available credits on their settings page. This also relates to the credit budgeting because a separate part of this is if you have users you want to cap credits for, so say you have 1,000 credits for your organization and you've got, 20 users, you may want to cap some of them so they only have 10 or 20 credits per user to ensure that one person isn't just consuming everything at once. So by enabling the second option, what we can do is view what our members have left of their credits, and we can just monitor users that are consuming some of them. We said Mia here has been consuming some of our credits. But having these caps in place just make sure that if we have some high users, that before they start consuming more than they need, they're kind of hitting that peak and they'll have to come to us before they can get more credits assigned. The other setting I want to take your attention to is member roles. Some of you may be familiar with this, but essentially in ArcGIS Online, each user will have a member role. If you're an administrator, that's a member role, as well as things like data editor, user, publisher. These are all default member roles that come with ArcGIS Online by default. But what you can do is create a custom role, and you'll see these roles come with these little custom titles on the side. How this relates to credit budgeting is you can actually set up roles that prevent your users from accessing certain tools. So say we want a low user role, you of course probably want a better name than that, and you need to make sure it's got some kind of description. As we're going to be monitoring their credits, they probably will need a full privilege capability, and we can go through each of their roles available and enable where we find fit. For the sake of this, I'm not going to be looking at the other sections, but you would need to address those also if you're making a standard custom role. But the key section here is this premium content and services. So I might have a user who day to day is not doing very much except a little bit of spatial analysis. They don't need to be doing they don't need to be doing things like geocoding, network analysis, or geo-enrichment. I do know that they need to do some imagery analysis, so I can assign this tool to them. But I don't think that any of the other tools or processes available to them is relevant. So by limiting these two user privileges for them to access, I'm making sure that there isn't even an opportunity for them to consume credits outside of these two processes. If we're happy enough with that, we can just click save. Hopefully it will let me save it. And you'll see that once it's loaded in here, our low user role has popped up with that custom title. So again, this is just another tool, I guess, in your toolbox that you can use to minimize credit usage. One last thing I want to cover, and I guess I can now preface that this isn't just specific to admins, this is for your users as well. This is really great to be mindful of as you go into your content tab. And I'll pull up just any feature layer. And we'll go into the settings tab here. We want to go down to the feature layer settings, and there's a couple of pieces here I just want to bring your attention to, as often people aren't so aware that these settings are in place and also could be aiding in credit consumption. So we have two settings that are kind of key here. First one is keep track of changes to the data, and you'll see it's got this manage changelog button beside it. And we also have this enable sync button. Now, for many organizations, these two settings are vital, so I'm not telling you shouldn't enable them, but just be mindful of what it could lead to. So if you need these enabled, one thing I would recommend is having a look at these managed change logs. So within here, you can actually decrease the amount of time that your change logs are monitoring. So if you only want 30 days of monitoring, this will ensure you're not having a really inflated service size because it's not holding 180 days versus 30. So that's always one way to manage the amount of increase your service could have in storage size. Hopefully this will just finish in the background. But the other one's enable sync. So once again, this also attributes to that change log. And so over time, as more and more changes are collected and noted, it will inflate your service size. If you don't need the settings, turn them off. If you do, just be wary of this setting. This is not wanting to go away, so that's fine. I might get Mia to jump back to the slides, but if anyone can see in the background, you'll see there's a little optimize layer drawing option here. And once we're back in the slides, I can just mention why that's valuable. I'm going to stop sharing here and I'll let Mia take over. Thanks, Mia. Yeah, so just to mention that optimized layers. If I could get you to skip to that next slide just quickly, please, Mia. So this optimized layer option, why this is something I wanted to mention is, as an example, we have a feature layer that's got 136 megabytes before being optimized. But when the layer optimization occurred, the hosted feature layer became 205 megabytes. So even though it might sound like a small change, it's almost doubled the storage size of that service. So you can imagine over time, even all of these small little changes will start to add up. So it's just something to be mindful of if you're running processes that aren't necessary. If I can get you to jump back a slide again, please, Mia. So just to cover off kind of a lot of what I just did in that demonstration, but a key thing, what we really want to talk about is how do we decrease that credit consumption. And as an admin, one of the key things that we always recommend is taking a look at all of the content stored and work out if things are still necessary or still valid. If you are an older organization, you might have content that's been sitting in there for 5+ years. It might not even be relevant anymore. So you could be looking to delete some of this content and free up some storage space. Alternatively, you may have some content you don't really need in there anymore, but you're not happy with deleting it, which of course is totally understandable. And there's a few different export options that you can take on to look at this. So it could be saving it locally and having it in ArcGIS Pro. You also could be downloading some of it as Excel spreadsheets or CSVs. There's many different options available, and I do recommend taking a look at what's available in the settings of your layer in ArcGIS Online. Just to cover the bottom ones again, credit budgeting, super important. Allocating credit limits, also important, and so are those custom roles. So as a non-admin, once again, keep an eye on those sync functions and your tracking functions. Keep an eye on layer optimization. One other thing you can do for yourself is if you go into your own profile settings in ArcGIS Online, there is an option that says credits. Now what you can do here is see the credits you've been allocated, and you can see how many consumed, and I believe it gives you a bit of a graph overview of what you're using. So it's just another way to be mindful of what you're consuming. Another one is check the credit estimates that you're provided before you run a tool. If you know you've only got 10 credits left and you're about to run a tool that's going to consume 9 credits, you can decide maybe I should talk to my admin about bumping up my credit allowance, or maybe I should just not run the tool or hold off. You can at least make a bit more of an informed decision before proceeding. And I guess it's just a general thing is having an understanding of what credits consume or what processes consume credits as either a user or an admin is always going to enhance the knowledge that you have before proceeding with certain processes. So as an admin, you know you can efficiently manage your credit usage because you have an understanding. And as a user, you know that you can manage your own credit consumption, which overall should help your organization as a whole. But with that, I think that's enough from me, and I'm going to pass over to Mia now. Thank you, Mia.
Thanks, Jess. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about managing your content. Managing your content with an administrator role or with administrative privileges comes with a variety of abilities, some of which Jess has already talked about. But this is to ensure that your content is accessible to all the right users. And I know it's a big job, but hopefully today we can go through some of the ways that ArcGIS makes it easier for you to stay organized. Making sure that your data is being shared with the right people and in the right way can be pretty tricky, but groups in ArcGIS Online have made this simpler for you and your organization. If you haven't come across groups yet, they are a collection of items usually associated with a specific region, subject, or project. They're a pretty great way to organize and encourage collaboration and have a variety of configurations that can make them useful to all sorts of your situations. As an administrator, you can configure any of the groups in your organization, as well as those that you've created yourself. When creating a new group, the first step you need to do is identify that purpose to help determine how you will manage these people and the content. Some of these things that you'll need to think about are who should be able to contribute content, who should be able to edit content, is the data open to the public or just for your private group members? Is this to be shared with users in other organizations? All of these sorts of questions lead directly to choices that you're going to have to make when you're configuring a new group. So this is what you'll see when you're creating a new group. And you'll start by adding in those details to look at your name and your tags. And as you go through, you'll have a look at who can be in the group, whether or not these are organization members, who can contribute, the kinds of people, whether that they can add themselves into the group. And as we scroll down a little bit, also look at who can edit the data that's in these groups. And that can be really important if you are sharing data with colleagues that you all want to be able to edit at the same time, or story maps or anything like that. You'll need to click that shared update on. That can't be changed after you've created your groups. And same with the administrative group, whether or not you want people to be able to add themselves or remove themselves from groups. Once you have created that group and you've got some data shared into it, it is pretty important to manage, again, who is within this group. As an administrator, you can add and remove members, and as those teams change, and update the individual roles to keep those group initiatives on track. This can be particularly important when you're sharing your data with members outside of your organization, as you may not want them to be able to edit those data sets, but for sure have that view privileges. This collaboration is incredibly helpful with those projects spanning departments, and they enable everyone to have that same up-to-date access to data. Another way that we can organize our content is by using categories. These are a type of filter that you can use when searching through your ArcGIS Online content, and they make it easier for users to discover and organize content in groups and within your organization. Alongside the standard item type, date, and tags filters that you can see when you're trying to search through ArcGIS Online. Here on the screen, you can see the 7 basic content categories that are already in ArcGIS Online. They each have their own subcategories, and these were originally used to support the ArcGIS Living Atlas. These are all very catered towards general geospatial content, so they might not fit the purpose of your organization purposefully. But what's great is that as an administrator or a member with privileges, you can configure these categories for your organization. This means that you could get creative and come up with an entire new set of categories for your organization's needs, or you can get inspiration from the ISO or Inspire categories, and then just customize them for what works for you without actually starting from scratch. Another way to help get your content out there and keeping it organized is by marking it as authoritative. This is a badge that you might have seen before and is placed on your items within your organization to signal to users that that item is the best version of that kind of content. This is incredibly useful and usually used when your organization has published multiple versions of that same data set, whether this has different times or slightly different users have published the data. It makes it very clear to your users that this data is the version you should be using. However, just to note, the authoritative badge is only visible to those in your organization, even on items that are shared publicly. This is unless you have your organization verified by Esri, which we can help you with. And it is this way, once your organization is verified, is a good middle ground to get your content out to the public and looking professional without having to nominate your items to the Living Atlas. For those of you unaware, the Living Atlas of the World is a collection of geographic information from around the world. This includes data layers, web maps, and apps. And your organization can choose to contribute these by nominating your authoritative content. Those items, if you can see here in this image, have a little blue badge that says Living Atlas, just to highlight to users what that means. And as you can see next to it, that is the authoritative badge. That's that light green badge to let users know that they can trust your content, and this is the most up-to-date version. Authoritative content is also boosted in search results. So this will help make sure that your users are finding your data first over a copy or a different variation. It is important, however, if you're marking your content as authoritative, to take care and make sure you're following best practices. Some of these best practices when you're making your items discoverable is to make sure that those item details are updated, and you want to make sure that they are detailed and clear to give information about the source of the data, the currency, and the update schedule. These are all really important for users to know and whether they can trust your data or whether it's going to fit their purpose as well. On the layer level as well, you want to make sure that you have readable field aliases, pop-ups, and symbology set up. As you can see here on this New Zealand early childhood directory, the thumbnail has been set up clearly so you know what to expect. It's filled out the summary, the description. You have all the details you need to know about terms of use. And it's very clear what you're getting into with this layer. Now, another thing to note is that if you are providing authoritative data and for whatever reason that it's being replaced or it's aging out, you have to deprecate this layer. So if this layer is no longer, or web map or whatever you're providing is no longer relevant, deprecating it is really important to let users know they should no longer be using this layer. This can be done by editing the item description, name, and terms of use as in mature support. Also linking the new item that you're replacing it with in the description so that users can easily find it and replace it in their content. It's also important to configure, again, any of those pop-ups in the layers and the web maps to indicate the deprecated status. And finally, once you've made sure that's very clear, you can go into your layer settings and mark it as deprecated as you would have when you went to mark it as authoritative. This will now remove the item from ArcGIS Online searches, so new users will be more likely to find your current items, and the transition from old data to new data will hopefully be super smooth. As an administrator, managing content that's both shared out to the public but also used in internal products, it is important to be able to keep control of that content even when users are leaving the organization. I'm sure this is a common workflow for a lot of you, managing your organization's items so that users are still able to have access to your data even when the original creator may not be able to manage it any longer for whatever reason. This workflow is particularly useful when moving content from a user that's been removed. With administrator privileges, you can transfer ownership of a user's content to another user. This way that the items can still be effectively managed, kept up to date, which is especially important for those items that we are sharing as authoritative. If you are deleting a user from your organization, you can streamline this process by transferring all of their content at once to another user. This is extremely important, as if you haven't tried to delete a user yet, you cannot delete them if their member still owns any of their content. So being able to streamline that and just transfer all of it at the same time really speeds up your workflow. Of course, you can still transfer just some of the items and remove the rest, but yeah, that will really speed up your processing. One final thing to note about transferring those contents is that when you are transferring ownership of items that are in groups, the new owner must have the correct roles. So that means that if the group has only allowed owners and managers to contribute data, then the new item owner must either be an owner or a manager as well. Transferring layers to a new user will also change the owner of the original file that it was created from. As with hosted feature layers, the dependent hosted layers will also have a change of ownership. So making sure you know where those changes are going to take place is really important when you go about changing the content over to different users. So now we're going to talk about what we want to do about that content that we don't want to just transfer, we want to completely delete from our organization. Well, it just got a little bit safer to do so. I'm sure we've all had that moment of fear when we've realized we've deleted the wrong layer or map and frantically looked for the undo button. Well, now you don't need to panic, as from the June 2024 ArcGIS Online update, the recycle bin has been introduced to save you from that really awkward conversation with your manager. The new recycle bin gives you a 14-day buffer before your content is permanently deleted from ArcGIS Online, allowing you that time to go back and restore that item if need be. As an organization, an older organization, you do need to make sure that you have opted in to using the recycle bin to be able to utilize those project saving features. Once you've opted in to use the recycle bin, all you'll have to do is go and delete your content as normal. But now you'll be met with the following pop-up you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, where it will confirm to you that the item is going to be sent to the recycle bin. Once you press that little delete button, the item will be sent to your recycle bin and remain there for 14 days. In this time, as either the owner of the content or as an administrator, you can go into your own recycle bin and see what's sitting there and restore it if you need it. As an administrator, you can also restore or manage content for the entire organization's recycle bins. The items sitting in your recycle bins, also good to note, are still being stored in your ArcGIS Online. So like what Jess was talking about earlier, these are still going to use and be powered by your credits for storage. So if you don't want to send your item to the recycle bin, or if it's been in there and you don't want it using any more of your storage, you can click that delete permanently button. And in brackets, cannot be undone. So do take care when you are deleting permanently. So be intentional and make sure that you know what you're doing in that case. For the content that you still do need for ongoing projects and you realize you don't want to delete it permanently and is still sitting in your recycle bin, you still have some decisions to make about where you do want it. As when an item is moved to the recycle bin, it's unshared from all its groups, its favorites folder has its categories, folders, and metadata all removed. This means you'll need to restore all of this information and have decided where you do want it and what you want it looking like when you're restoring it. One thing to note is that not all items in your ArcGIS Online are supported in the recycle bin, and they will be bypassed completely and be permanently deleted when you go to delete that content. Some of these items are shown here on the left, but don't panic. If you aren't sure if your item is supported by a recycle bin, it will notify you in that same pop-up, as you can see here on the right-hand side, that some of these items will be permanently deleted. So you still need to be careful and make sure that when you are deleting your items, you know what you're deleting and you do want to delete it, because although the recycle bin is there to save you, it's not going to save you every single time. So we do need to make sure we're being very intentional about our deleting. So just to wrap up what we've discussed, managing content with an administrator role in ArcGIS Online involves a variety of tools and strategies to ensure that your data is organized and accessible within your organization. The key approaches we talked about today included using groups to encourage collaboration, categorizing your content to enhance its discoverability, and marking your data as authoritative to provide clarity on what's up to date. As an administrator, you also have the ability to manage content ownership, especially from those users that you're removing, by either transferring their data or by moving it into that recycle bin and then deleting it permanently. I just want to say a big thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen and learn about content and credit management. I'm hoping you've learned something, and if you would like some more information, we do have these extra resources. So please take a look at the ArcGIS blogs page. There are some great blogs that are continuing on what we've discussed today, such as the Managing Credits in ArcGIS Online blog, which is a lot of great insights in addition to what we've talked about. Also have a look at our ArcGIS documentation site. A relevant document that you might want to have a look at is the user management documentation for ArcGIS Online, and as well as the Esri Academy, which has many great web courses for you to have a look at if you want to further their education after this webinar. We've got a few upcoming training opportunities with the introduction to GIS using ArcGIS. This is at the end of August in person in Wellington. And the learning plan ArcGIS Online Administration Essentials is also available online. Upcoming webinars, we have the overview of licensing in ArcGIS Online and Enterprise, and at the end of August as well. And then in October, we have ArcGIS for developers and then real-time GIS. Finally, we have, if you haven't already, we have the Q&A button up the top. If you haven't been able to ask your questions, it would be a great idea to put those in now. We'll take a look, see if what we've got. I think we have one question in terms of the recycle bin, whether or not it works for survey 123 content. At this stage, I believe it does.
Yeah, so yeah, just to add on to you a little bit, Mia, I did Google that in the background while we were holding on there. So there is a list of non-supported content for the recycle bin, and it doesn't include Survey 123, so we'd surmise that it would be included. But it's more things such as 360 VR experience, ArcGIS Velocity, big data analytic, hub initiatives, hub site applications, and workflows. These aren't included, but there is, if you quickly search up what's supported with the ArcGIS Online recycling bin, you should get a full detailed list of this. And I guess like Mia said before, it will warn you if it's going to remove it or not permanently.
For sure. Jess, you might want to take this one. How do you purchase more credits?
It's a good question. So in the past, you'd probably be talking to your account manager, and you can still do that. However, there is now the ArcGIS Online store or the Esri store that's available for our New Zealand customers. So all you need to do is search up Esri store in Google. It will take you straight to the New Zealand store by default, and you can look at purchasing credits from there.
Oh, and on that as well, can anyone run a credit report?
It's also a good question. So no, it's only administrators can run the reports, as it's one of those admin type processes that can occur. But if you're a non-admin and you are interested in having these reports run, just have a chat to your admin about either giving you yourself an admin privilege or they could run it for you. I do note another one here, Mia, which is about sharing groups. Do you have to share your content publicly before you can do that?
So no, what's great about groups is that this is sort of separate to those how you're sharing publicly within your organization or privately. So if it's content you only want to share with a single group, you can share it privately and then to that group, and that will only have the people in that group are the only ones that will have access to that content.
Awesome. That's cool. Doesn't look like we've got any more, but we will stay on the line for a couple more minutes just in case any more questions come in. But again, if we haven't answered any of your questions today or you're a bit nervous about asking any more, we definitely recommend reaching out to us. I do notice another one here. So using ArcGIS data pipeline, is there an easy way to know how many credits would be consumed during scheduled task runs? For example, if I set up a task to run and decide to have it run every Monday, I'd like to know an estimate of how many credits it would consume. I'm not sure, Mia, do you know the answer there by chance with pipelines?
I'm not sure. I do believe data pipelines are calculated based on the amount of time it takes to run. So depending on that, I think you may be able to predict if you've been running it for a while. But I'm not sure if there's a way to immediately estimate those tasks, like how much those tasks would take right now.
Yeah. For the person who asked that, I will double check for you and I will come back with an answer. I'm not too sure at the moment if it's estimating before you run it and we'll let you know, or if you have to work it yourself, but I'll email you separately and give you an answer there. But thank you very much for that question. I see we've got another one from Kim. My organization wants to federate a number of separate groups, but wants an overview and they want to limit editing. Can we merge these groups for a summary? Mia, do you know?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. We might have to get back to you on that and look into that a little bit further.
Yeah, I think we might need to get a bit more information from you too there, Kim, because are you just wanting to limit editing for all users in the groups? Because if so, you could do that through privileges for the group. So you can make it so they can only see the content, they can't edit it. You could also set it up that they could edit it, but only some users. So it does take some configuration there, but we'll definitely have a chat to you separately offline about what we can do there. But thank you very much for that question. Do we have any more? Alrighty, I think that's looking like it's about it. We'll stay on the line for a couple more minutes, but again, I just want to reiterate what Mia said before. We're really grateful that you all took the time to come and listen to us today. And thank you for participating and sending in all these great questions. But yeah, just thank you again, and we'll hang about for a little bit longer. And anyone who we didn't give a full answer to, we will be following up with you separately and hopefully getting that answer to you. But thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.